Welcome into the Landon Tengwall Show, brought to you by the Student Bookstore downtown State College, where you should get all your Penn State merch needs. Penn State versus Ohio State, 12 p.m. Saturday in the Shoe. Thank you to Fox Big Noon once again. I know the Ohio State fans have actually got it a lot worse than us, but we are once again subject to the unfortunate Big Noon kickoff. Last time Penn State beat Ohio State in Columbus was 2011. That was also the last time Penn State had an interim head coach. Fun fact, Penn State's actually only won in Columbus 2 times since being a part of the Big Ten since 1993. So it has not boded well for Penn State in the state of Ohio. And I'll tell you what, this Ohio State football team, I do hold firmly the belief that this is the best team in college football. I know there's some people throwing Indiana out there, and Indiana has looked really complete in every single game they've played in, but just the talent on this roster and how they operate has been impressive. Specifically, this defense. Let's talk about it. Where they rank in the FBS on a lot of these stats. I mean, second in total yards allowed, first in third down conversion rate, first in touchdowns allowed, third in passing yards allowed, eighth in rushing yards allowed, and first in points per game allowed at 6.8. Less than a touchdown is what these guys are allowing on a per game average basis. Matt Patricia has been elite. And I just need to say, I think I joined in a little bit on it. My apologies to Matt Patricia and this Ohio State defense, because there were jokes being thrown around. This guy can only get it done with Bill Belichick. He's going to bring this NFL defense to a college team, and it's going to be too much for them, or it's just not going to work out. Well, it has worked out and some. Let me tell you what. He faces off against Andy Kotelnicki, who has obviously been struggling in year 2 for Penn State and has really failed to find a rhythm within this offense through the passing game and the rushing attack, really. Kotelnicki last week did a couple interviews and was asked, hey, what's wrong with the offense right now? Why can't we pick up and where we left off in 2024? He started off saying, I don't know. Kind of went on to say, how much time do you have? There's a lot of things we could get into. But once again, finished it off saying, I don't have a good explanation for it. And I think that's a bad look. Give me something to work with if you're Andy Kotelnicki. Like Franklin always, third down percentages, and then he'd get into how, first and second down, and we're not good enough there. Give me something along those lines of, the run game's not getting going. If you're paid over $2 million and you give me, I don't know, well, that's not very reassuring to me as a fan, as an alumni, as a donor, if I'm hearing that. Well, what the hell? That's what he's paid. You're paid to know what is going wrong. And like I said, I know he knows to a degree, but at least throw something out there, because I don't know doesn't exactly sound good. Now, Penn State's offense has not surpassed 70 passing yards in the first half in Big Ten play up to this point. So early on in the game, the passing game has really struggled to get flowing, whether that was with Drew Aller or Ethan Grunkmeyer. Now, Ethan Grunkmeyer, let's talk about him for a second. One hell of a fire he's been thrown into, having to go to Iowa, which is really looking like a top 10 defense. Now he's traveling to Ohio State, and then he gets that Indiana defense as well in a week here that looks very, very vicious. So how can Grunk manage this game? He obviously cannot afford to try to be Superman. He needs to go out. He needs to be accurate and in command and take what the defense for Ohio State gives him. And a lot of the issues for Penn State has been the wide receivers and the lack of plays they've created, but also just the lack of separation that we've seen from these guys. There's a lot of times where I watch the All-22 film and people are going to, be on top of the quarterback. Why can't we complete a pass? Well, a lot of time when there is very little to no separation, there's nowhere to go for the quarterbacks. And that's why you've seen Grunkmeyer and Aller before he got injured. There was so much of running on passing downs where they're taken back, they don't see anything, and it's like, boom, I just got to take off. We saw that a ton from Ethan Grunkmeyer versus Iowa just because there was really nothing down the field. Now, you have an opportunity to possibly put in a little bit of a spark plug in Kobe Howard. I'm seeing it on Twitter. People are starting the trend, free Kobe Howard. He even said, Kobe Howard made a post on Twitter. He was like, I was in traffic, running a little bit late, but now I'm here, signaling that he might be getting a little bit more of an opportunity against Ohio State this weekend. And I think he needs to. The few times we've seen Kobe Howard playing football, been few and far between because they just don't want to put him out there seemingly. He's been good. He created some really good separation on one catch, one target against Iowa and helped out his quarterback on third down. And that's, like I said, we haven't seen a lot of that out of the starters. So inject a little bit more Kobe Howard in this game. Get Tyseer Denmark out there. Continue to use Devontae Ross and find ways to get him open because we're going to need that. If you want to keep this game within a realm where you can find a way to be within one possession at the end and try to find a way to win this thing if you're Penn State, you are going to have your wide receivers be involved. And Terry Smith was asked about the passing game after Iowa, and I love how blunt Terry Smith has really been. And anytime, I've said this a couple times, but anytime you get a new coach where they're not looking to be media trained about this, and that's what I like about Terry Smith. He is just honest, even with the media, of saying, hey, yeah, we don't have a down the field passing attack right now. We simply just cannot do it. It's something that we haven't tried to do all year. And I think that's part of the reason, myself included, but a lot of fans have issues with Kotonicki and how he's been calling the offense because it has just looked like there's no plan. I said that last week after watching the Iowa tape. It looks like there's no plan for the passing game. It's just, hey, we're going to go out there and see what works. It's not setting things up. It's not, messing with the DBs a little bit. It's taken a huge step back, even from last year, honestly, as far as how the passing game has been. And you can't do that against Ohio State because if you do not have a passing attack that can threaten you down the field, well, what can Ohio State start to do? They can start to creep guys into the box. You don't want Caleb Downs, Ohio State safety, who I've watched almost every single All-22 of Ohio State this year. Hasn't been as much of an impact player. Caleb Downs hasn't, but he's still there, best believe. And I think partially because they started to have so many other playmakers on their defense start to emerge. It almost feels like Caleb Downs hasn't had to do as much. But you do not want number 2 adding on into the run game because we simply can't stretch the field. And he's saying, oh, there's no threat, so I'm going to start to creep into the box. Because really, I mean, these Ohio State DBs in general, like I said, Downs, Jalen McCain is a true sophomore for Ohio State. He is opposite Downs at free safety. He has been looking really spectacular. And Patricia in this passing defense that Ohio State runs has been very thorough. They do a lot of disguising of coverages and moving guys around, trying to mess with the eyes of the quarterback a little bit, make him second guess himself. And I think in Ethan Grunkmeyer's second start, especially once again away in a somewhat hostile environment, the shoe doesn't get too loud at around noon, but it's going to get up there. They are going to try to play with Grunk's head with coverages, and hey, we're going to show a man-to-man look, and then boom, we're popping back to cover 2, and Grunk's head spinning a little bit. Like I think that's the idea Patricia wants to come into this game with, and then not only just coverage-wise, something Ohio State does really well, specifically on third downs, is their simulated pressures. Because right now, simulated pressures are basically when you see like 6 or 7 guys mugged up on the line of scrimmage, you see linebackers, safeties, and they're not in like a 3-point stance, but they're just kind of mugged up, and sometimes they drop out, sometimes they blitz, sometimes you'll see stunts out of it. Ohio State does that very well, and they have to do it very well this year because they don't have a true elite edge in the sense of how they've had Chase Youngs and Nick and Joey Bosa and those type of guys. They don't have that this year. I'm a fan of a couple of their defensive linemen. Caden Curry has been great as far as rushing the passer. Kenyatta Jackson is also good, but no one that I would coin elite. So a lot of times that's why you see 7 guys pressed up, and next thing you know, Patricia might only send 4 guys on a rush, but it's never really the 4 that you expect. And so sometimes you'll see Arvell Reese, you'll see Sonny Styles, you'll see Caleb Downs all pressed up on the line of scrimmage with 4 other defensive linemen up. And that's a lot for an offensive line to have to sort through. Because take you in the mind of an offensive lineman, you're looking at that, and it's basically a guess. When you start to kick and get into your pass pro as an offensive lineman, when you got 7 guys up, the idea is across the board, you communicate, you just say, hey, get vertical, get vertical, get vertical. So basically it just means get back and just have your head on a swivel and try to figure out who is the most dangerous guy. And as you can imagine, that is very difficult because you are guessing. You're not confident as an offensive lineman, so naturally you really can't play at 100% speed because you're looking around, and next thing you know, they drop out basically everybody, and they're bringing like a cornerback blitz, and that's a lot of the stuff that Patricia likes to get into. And really, that was something that Iowa succeeded well when they brought those pressures against Penn State. The pass protection wasn't great for Penn State against Iowa. Now, I do think Ethan Grunkmeyer did a really good job navigating that pressure. There was a couple times where he saw a 7-man blitz and just straight up panicked and just threw the ball away, and it was an intentional grounding. And so there was a couple of those moments to be expected for someone in their first start. But honestly, I think we saw a lot of poise. We saw a couple different 4th downs, 3rd downs, where Grunk got the yards with his legs because no one was open and pressure came, and he found a little bit of a hole and got loose. So I think he's going to have to do more of that. I don't expect Ohio State to necessarily spy Ethan Grunkmeyer because that's not the type of quarterback he is. If they do, Arvell Reese, Ohio State's linebacker, probably is the best spying linebacker, and forget spying, the best linebacker in all of college football. So you got to be careful there of Ohio State having the guys to track you down. If they can contain rush and kind of have Reese make sure that Grunk doesn't get outside of the pocket, the answer is you're going to have wide receivers get open. These Penn State wide receivers and tight ends are going to have to beat Ohio State's DBs. That's kind of a non-negotiable for this game, at least some of the time. I'm not saying every single play, but Grunk has to have playmakers that win for him. You got to help out your young quarterback. Now, big way to help out your young quarterback, number one, stay out of 3rd and long. Don't put him in 3rd and 9 against these simulated pressures we're talking about where everybody's head is going to be spinning. You have to establish the ground game. Now, that's something that Penn State has not done a very good job of in recent years when playing Ohio State. So 2023 at Ohio State, we went 26 carries for 49 yards. That was Drew Aller's first big game. I think we made him throw it 43 times. Don't do that to Ethan Grunkmeyer. We cannot afford that. 2024 against Ohio State, Penn State had 32 carries for 120 yards, but Tyler Warren and Drew Aller were the number 1 and number 2 rushers that day. Nick and Katron, both starting running backs for Penn State, went 2.3 yards per carry against Ohio State in 2024. So putting that out there and saying that a big reason why Penn State hasn't been able to finish off Ohio State in these games is because they can't run the ball. They have really struggled to run the ball and establish that identity, and they're leaning on a passing attack that really for the past 2 years, I can visualize it in my brain. I remember watching the Ohio State Penn State tape from last year, and it was like Drew Aller had nobody open. And if Tyler Warren was a little open, there wasn't much there. It was just Drew Aller trying to do a lot with nothing. And that's something, as I said earlier, you can't afford to do with Ethan Grunkmeyer. So it's not going to be easy, but you got to get Katron Allen going in this rushing attack. If you are not able to establish the ground game, then we are sitting in those 3rd and longs, and we are relying on wide receivers that have struggled against UCLA and Northwestern to get open against the likes of Ohio State and some really, really talented DBs, and I don't think you want to be in that position. Now, Ohio State was really good at defensive tackle last year, and that's part of the reason why Penn State struggled so much, and coming into this year, that was kind of a bright spot for Penn State looking ahead in the preseason. I remember looking ahead and saying, hey, Penn State should be able to run the ball really well against Ohio State this year. Their D tackles are unproven. They were looking around the transfer portal and didn't really get anybody, and Penn State's going to have this great offensive line and great rushing attack. We're going to be able to just run the ball against Ohio State. Well, very quickly, McDonald at defensive tackle, Malone at defensive tackle, Caden Curry, as I'll just label him defensive line because he plays everywhere. He'll play the nose all the way out to the wide 9 technique. They'll move him all around, but they have been really good in the run stuff this year and just a lot more physical, and it looks like they've been playing together longer than they really have. And then at linebacker, as I said earlier, you have Arvell Reese, who I think is the best linebacker in America, and you have Sonny Styles. They are both elite at taking on these blocks. So when that guard or center is climbing up to the linebacker, I'll see times, they don't shy away from it. They put hands in, they want to get hands on, and then shed you. And a lot of times it looks like these offensive linemen are running into a brick wall of a linebacker. So for Penn State, that's something they've struggled with, is getting up to the second level, and not only getting up there, but sticking on those linebackers. That is how you create those explosive runs. You handle the down lineman first, but you got to get up on those linebackers, and they have been fantastic at that block shedding. And then also Patricia is going to plug guys. He will send safety blitzes. He's going to get Caleb Downs in the mix and get him in the box because, like I said, I mean, Penn State has to be able to run the ball to win this game, to find a way to stay in this thing. So one thing that you do get back if you're Penn State, Vanga is likely to be back at left guard. He did miss the Iowa game, so there's a little bit of an injection there. And I do think Penn State probably had its best blocking day as far as an offensive line against Iowa in the run game. It still wasn't great, but it was better from what we've seen. So you have to continue to stack on that, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, Penn State is going to have to win some one-on-one matchups because Ohio State, and they're going to come down. And we've talked about the difficulties. I've talked to you this year about, when a defensive line has a multiple front, meaning that they might run 3 down, they might run 4 down linemen, they might go 5 down. It's the same way with Ohio State. Matt Patricia has always been a very multiple defense. They're going to give a million different looks, and you got to be ready for a lot of different things. So that is what this line is facing. Can Nick Dawkins, can Vanga, can Anthony Dunco win these one-on-one battles that they have up front? That is the question for this game. Now, how else can Penn State stay in this game besides running the ball well? Obviously, and this kind of goes always, but not turning the ball over. And there's one thing that I guess kind of does bode well for them as Ohio State has actually really been lacking in turnovers created. As much as this defense is one of the best defenses I've seen in a long time, not only schematically, but just the ball players they have. Right now, they are sitting at 95th in the FBS in turnovers created, only 0.8 turnovers per game. Obviously, you cannot get 0.8 of a turnover, but it has been, not even hitting a turnover per game for that good of a defense. That's something to keep an eye on. So can you be good in the ground game? Can you take what they give you in the passing attack? Be somewhat surgical, be, mindful if you're Ethan Grunkmeyer. Don't take shots you don't need to take, and don't turn over the football. And I think you can find a way to stay in that game. But really, I mean, it's going to be on this offensive line to create some push for Katron Allen, and the wide receivers just have to find some semblance of separation for Ethan Grunkmeyer. All right, before we get into Ohio State's offense versus Penn State's defense, wanted to share my favorite Ohio State memory. I shared this on Juck on Bucks podcast, and if you are not subscribed to the Landon Tengwall Show, hit that subscribe button. We got the greatest content you can get coming at you guys. A lot of great collabs. We're having producer Jesse on again this week. As I mentioned, we're going to have Juck on Bucks on. He's the best to do it in the Ohio State space. So we're having him on this week to preview the game. So it should be a great week of content. We have more coaching carousel videos. We're diving into Manny Diaz and then a little Kalen DeBoer this week. So we're going to have you guys prep for everything. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And no, my story is not from Ohio State 2021 when I was holding the clipboard because I was a true freshman. I was sitting there and Trout, our offensive line coach, he would make me write down every play. And this is before tablets were allowed on the sideline, before Harbaugh and company cheated their asses off. And so I had to write down, okay, this was mid-zone left. All right, the next play was this pass protection. So when they came to the sidelines, Trout could be like, hey, what was play 6 on that drive? And I had it right there. And so it got to a point where we were getting our butts kicked in 2021, and the fans started screaming at me, hey, clipboard boy. They called me clipboard boy. So that was my one and only visit to Columbus. But my story was how Chase Young who was a good friend of mine, forced Larry Johnson into offering me. I went up after my freshman year of high school. So this would be spring of 2018. Chase Young, that was like full-on superstar mode. That was the spring before he was going to the NFL. And he had like 4.5 sacks in the spring game. And so I go in, and Urban Meyer's still coaching the team, obviously. And I meet Urban Meyer, and he was all right. He was definitely he was Urban Meyer, let's put it that way. So I was kind of like I wasn't already feeling it. And when I was going in to meet Urban Meyer in his office, Emmitt Smith was coming out with his son. And I just looked at Emmitt Smith, and I'm like, there's no way. Like, I'm looking at Emmitt Smith right now. And then so we go in, and next thing I know, we're like 3 minutes into our meeting with Coach Meyer, and there's like a knock on the door, and Emmitt Smith peeks back in, and I'm just absolutely starstruck. And he's like, I think I left my phone in here. And my stepmom was sitting on Emmitt Smith's phone. So that's my glory story right there. But so we continue on. Urban Meyer does not offer me. And at this point, I have like 20, 25 offers as a freshman in high school. And I think I'm hot stuff. And I'm all like in a tiffy because I'm like, oh, he didn't offer me. I'm like, this is BS. Forget Ohio State. And so we go back and we're hanging out at Chase's place afterwards because I was there with Chase's little cousin who played on my high school team. And so we're hanging out with Chase. And he asked me, he's like, hey, did they offer you today? Because he kind of knew the situation. And I'm like, nah, Chase, they didn't offer me. He's like, what? He's like, hold on, gets on his phone. I see him text someone. He's like, all right, it's handled. I get a text from LJ right after. He's like, yo, I'll be out at Chase's place in like 10 minutes. He's like, all right, I'm out back 10 minutes later. I scribble on around back. There he is in, the big expedition that all the coaches drive. He puts down the window that's like tinted. And he's like, son, you have an offer from the Ohio State University. Window up, rolls off. I'm like, that's good enough for me. I'm like, I'm good. I got my Ohio State offer. Never actually went back again. But that's my favorite story that, yes, Chase Young basically pressed Larry Johnson into offering me, and I don't think Urban Meyer had a clue, but who honestly really cares when you're offering a freshman in high school? So that's my favorite recruiting story of all time. So if you've heard that, I've told that a couple times, but I figured it was the appropriate moment to put that out there. All right, Ohio State's offense. One of the most efficient offenses in college football. Specifically, second-year quarterback Julian Sayin sitting at an 80% completion rate. That is like borderline unheard of when you're 7-8 games into the college football season. And I'm impressed with how Ryan Day and Brian Hartline have worked this development of Julian Sayin, someone that is thought to be very good, and the Ohio State quarterbacks are almost always very good. It feels like for the past 10, 15 years, go back as long as you want. But the way that they did not try to rush him, and they didn't ask him to make Superman plays or really be Superman at all in any games. They said, hey, make the throws that we create for you, essentially. So what you're seeing a lot of, especially in the early games for Ohio State, was a ton of RPO where it was just a quick decision. Hey, do you pull this or do you not? And there was a lot of times where if he saw off coverage, he was pulling it and he was firing the ball out to his wide receivers. You're seeing a lot of boot play action, meaning that they fake the handoff and then kind of run to the sideline, and there's a couple routes coming across, and a lot of times it's just easy passes. It's showing you, is this there or is it not? Throw it away or get it into the flats. And what you see a lot of is just the quick game for this Ohio State passing attack. Now, they've slowly evolved and slowly started to open it up a little bit more for Julian Sayin. It was like when they played Minnesota like 2 or 3 weeks ago, was when you really started to see them say, hey, let's take some opportunities. We have Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Let's start to press this ball down the field. And so Julian Sayin now, he will throw some deep balls, and he's got a pretty deep ball. Sometimes the accuracy can be a little bit off, but you really just lay it up there for two elite wide receivers, and they're able to go make plays for you. And Sayin is quickly figuring that out. But just like watching Sayin's tape, and I've watched pretty much every single one of his games from the All-22, I'm impressed where I can just watch his head and his eyes, and I see him go through his reads. And a lot of times he'll get pretty good protection. We'll talk about the protection a little bit more in a second. There's some breakdowns there, but a lot of times he has good protection, and he looks like an older quarterback. He looks like an experienced guy that goes, okay, number 1 read, not there. Number 2, not there. Number 3, and he starts to feel a little bit of pressure, and it's boom, eyes get to his check down, and boom, I'm going to my check down. And that's something that's been impressive for me to watch. Anytime this second-year quarterback, but first-year starter, has only played in 7 games, anytime he feels pressure, it's automatic eyes snap to my check down, and boom, I'm getting it out to my check down. And that's part of the reason why he has an 80% completion rate, because he's incredibly efficient. And I would say, there's times where he just doesn't take the risk that is there, that I say, oh, that deep ball might be there. He might have had that post, but instead he takes the check down for 7 or 8 yards. And it's been good for him. And you could see that from the numbers too. I mean, the running backs for Ohio State have been really involved in this passing game. 25 receptions for the running backs. Just to stack that up, the tight ends for Ohio State only have 33 receptions. So you can see how involved these running backs are. And like I said, sometimes you'll see him pass up a touchdown that looks like it might be there. It might not even be a sure touchdown, but there was like a time I saw Jeremiah Smith that I thought he had a step on the DB on a deep post. And I'm like, oh, you could probably take that shot. But instead, he just checked it down to the tight end on a curl route that was wide open, and they gained 12 yards. And that's kind of what this Ohio State offense is. It's incredibly, I don't want to call it safe, but they take what you give them. And Julian Sayin manages a game well. Like I said, he is not always trying to be Superman. And when you see a lot of these former 5-star young quarterbacks that don't have a ton of experience, you will see them very quickly try to start to play Superman football, and it can get them in some trouble. And that is why Sayin has been so good, because he's saying, hey, I'm not going to take that eye candy down there that something might be open. I'm just going to take my sure thing that I see that is 100% open right here, and boom, I'm into the flats with it. Now, another piece of this 80% completion rate is tons of RPO, run, pass, option. And what you'll see is Sayin rarely pass up anytime the wide receivers get a little bit open on the RPO. So what he's looking at is, it's almost always, whether it's an outside zone run, whether it's an inside zone, whatever it is, Sayin's eyes are looking out at the DBs. And anytime he sees the DB, their hips are facing the line of scrimmage when they're playing the wide receiver. If he sees the DB start to turn and get into what we call just kind of getting into the flow of hey, I'm going to turn and run because this wide receiver might start to take off. If he sees those DBs' hips turn and start to get into the running motion, that's when he'll pull it and fire it out to the wide receiver, because they're almost always on some type of hitch. A hitch is like a little curl route or basically a speed out, something real quick, quick slant, like those type of things you're going to see a ton of. So he's going to be looking out at these Penn State DBs. Are they giving space? So it's not only just does he see these DBs, like I said, start to change their momentum and turn and run, but it's also if he sees off-man coverage or off-zone coverage where there's 6, 7, 8 yards of space for this Ohio State wide receiver, he's almost always going to pull it, boom, and fire it. And he's got a quick trigger on him, that is for sure. Now, as I said, you started to see some confidence build in Sayin to throw the ball deep to Carnell Tate, to Jeremiah Smith, who I think multiple NFL teams would probably trade their starting wide receiver core for those two guys, because they are maybe both first-round talents as far as wide receivers go. But I think we're going to start to see him continue to take more of these shots. If you get one-on-one coverage, especially man coverage one-on-one, Sayin will probably take a shot in this Penn State-Ohio State game. So can A.J. Harris, Davian Collins, can you stay in front of some really talented wide receivers? And I mean, overall, as much as I'm saying this is a safe offense and they take what you give them, there's still some incredible ball placement from Julian Sayin on some deep corner routes. I mean, he can put the ball wherever he wants it on the field, and there's a reason why he is one of the Heisman front runners here. Now, let's talk about some weak spots on this Ohio State offense. Their right side, their right tackle, Daniels, has really struggled in pass pro, especially these past couple weeks against Wisconsin, allowed 6 pressures. I'll tell you, my notepad, there was a lot of Daniels written down and saying bad things, because he was getting whooped up on, not even just, it was just basic stuff. When he tries to get out of his stance, he gets out a little late and he gets in a bad position, and he got beat on 3 or 4 inside moves. And so I'm looking at that. You have to find a way to get Chaz Coleman one-on-one with Daniels at right tackle. I think that's incredibly important, especially on third downs. And right now, Coleman really hasn't played much. Past 2 games combined, 12 snaps. Terry Smith did say that he was kind of sick and didn't really fit the game plan against Iowa, and I get it. Iowa runs the football. I still think Chaz Coleman is plenty good in run defense, but you're going to have to get Chaz Coleman out there. He is your premier pass rusher. He's going to be home in the state of Ohio. You have a matchup to take advantage of. Now it is on you, Jim Knowles. Can you scheme this up to give your best pass rusher one-on-one opportunities against their worst pass protector? That's what I'm looking at there. But he's got to get more. I think it was 8 snaps against Iowa, and then it was like 4 snaps against Northwestern for Chaz Coleman. Got to get him out there. You can't afford not to put your best pass rusher against a weak spot on this Ohio State offensive line. Now, the Ohio State passing attack as a whole, as we just talked about, been borderline perfect. It's been very efficient. Their run game, not so much there. So the past 3 games for Ohio State on the ground: against Minnesota, 30 rushes for 133 yards. Illinois, 37 rushes for 106 yards. And then Wisconsin really struggled, 28 rushes for 98 yards. So the overall explosiveness and efficiency has really 2 things that Ohio State hasn't found in their rushing attack there. And part of it, they haven't found a true feature running back yet, which is weird. Ohio State always has a dude back there, but they're kind of going back and forth between Donaldson's the old guy, came from West Virginia, but he's starting to see less and less snaps. Isaiah West and Bo Jackson, both freshman running backs for Ohio State. Yes, his name is Bo Jackson at running back. One hell of a name. They have seen the brunt of the carries recently, and I don't know. I mean, watching the tape, there's a lot of times where the holes aren't necessarily there, but I think these Ohio State running backs have struggled to find those holes when they are there. At times, they've shown great tendencies, but at times it's like, you probably could have hit that hole right there to your right, but just kind of missed the hole there. Now, overall, the offensive line in the run game, good and bad. Their left side with Austin Saraveld at left tackle, Luke Montgomery at left guard, really, really good. I mean, those are some dominating run blocks up front that you will see from those two. But their right side, similar to pass pro, Daniels at right tackle and Tegra at right guard has been really shaky. Now, they actually have started to do a little bit of a right guard competition because Tegra has really, really struggled, not only in run game, but pass pro too. Like if I'm Jim Knowles, find a way to attack that right side of the offensive line for Ohio State. Joshua Padilla, 20 snaps in that Wisconsin game. So I think Tegra had like 40. So he didn't get, it wasn't like they split, but they started to work in someone else because Tegra was just getting beat up pretty bad. And overall, Wisconsin gave Ohio State's run game some real problems. As you saw, they didn't even break 100 yards rushing. So I think that's something to keep an eye on here for Penn State. And it sucks that these are my main questions. But, I mean, can Penn State be gap sound? Can they have LBs fill the holes that they need to? Can the defensive tackles not get pushed 3 to 4 yards off the line of scrimmage? Because those have all been reasons why Penn State has struggled to find success in, not allowing big rushing attacks to just get going on this defense. Because that's been a huge problem for Penn State against Northwestern. Against UCLA with Nico taking off. I mean, so many times this defense just has not been able to get off the field. Way too many. I mean, the sequence of UCLA and Northwestern, those two games were the two biggest 2-game stretch of the Penn State defense just being on the field. It was like well over 75 minutes of field time for that Penn State defense, and it's just too much, and it's not what Penn State is used to do on defense. Like, we don't normally do that. We're normally a lot more efficient, and we are able to create turnovers, get off the field, and that all starts up front. Can Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford, Denai Dennis Sutton, can you continue to shut down a rushing attack that hasn't been that good? Because if you allow a rushing attack that has struggled and you're the one that they open it up against, you don't want to be that. You don't want to be that. So find a way, Jim Knowles, come with a game plan that is simplified. Because that was the other thing that I talked about, and it just looks like these guys on defense are not able to play at full speed because it doesn't seem like they're fully confident in what they are being asked to do. It seems like it's too complex. Terry Smith even said that. He said, look, it's complex. It's a hard defense. It's an NFL-style defense. But if you're getting into week 8 for you as a defense, and you still have guys that don't know what they're doing or where they're lining up, you have to simplify it. That is on you as a coach, as a defensive coordinator. If everybody can't grasp it, well, make it easier to grasp. It's just that simple. So maybe don't make it as complex. Now, Wisconsin found a lot of success slanting guys, moving guys around, and that's something that Penn State already does a lot of. So watch that tape. Can you figure out similar ways to attack this Ohio State offensive line? Because they had problems when guys were slanting, moving, those stunts. That's how you get after this offensive line. And like I said, offensive line that's actually moving guys around a little bit as well. Then also, can you get some young linebackers involved? Dom DeLuca clearly cannot play 75, 80 snaps. He's meant to be a role player that gets in for 20, 25 snaps. But when he's in the entire game, you see opposing offenses start to try to specifically attack Dom DeLuca. And so when you have someone like that, can we rotate in Cam Smith? Can we rotate in Speck? Are there other guys that you can get involved? And I think that's kind of been a question mark for a lot of the Penn State fan base of, hey, we got a lot of young backers. Are they just not ready? Is the development not there? Because basically nobody, I mean, Keon Wiley's starting to play a little bit more, but it's clear there's not a lot of confidence in these young guys in the LB room. So you got to find a way to be a little bit better, because as I said, it was just attack number 0 on defense, and Iowa and Northwestern, they were finding a lot of success with that formula. And then last piece of this for the Penn State defense, we all know what happened with Jim Knowles and Ohio State. Ryan Day, who has been known to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder when everything happened with Michigan and COVID, he said, I'm going to hang 100 on those effers, talking about Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. I mean, he's a fiery guy. You best believe it's pedal to the absolute floor for this Ohio State offense. They want to try to embarrass Jim Knowles for kind of the situation of how it all ended. You best believe they want to do that. So you got to bring your A game. This Penn State defense has to play for Jim Knowles. They have to try to find a way to create some turnovers and disrupt what is an incredibly efficient, on-schedule offense. If you guys have been enjoying all this content, please hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, we have some great content coming this week. We got Juck on Bucks, Ohio State coverage there. We got producer Jesse. We got some some head coaching carousel situations we'll talk about. So we got a great week of content lined up for you guys. I missed you guys on the bye week. We took a couple days off, but it was a good recharge, and now we're ready to attack this back half of the season. And hopefully Penn State can find a little bit of effort here, dig deep, and make this a really good game. So I hope you guys enjoy it, but I will see you tomorrow for Terry Smith's press conference. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.